society organizations and individuals who had reconnected the people back to the PVC in the hope that we might be able to have genuine changes at the polls in deference to the yearnings and aspirations of a lot of Nigerians. So as far as Nigerians were concerned, Nigerians trooped out, they were engaged, but that is the point where elections ended. Citizens' engagement. And the word citizen is important, and we'll come back to it as I answer your question. So Nigerians were generally engaged, even in parts of Nigeria where they had given up on Nigeria. And it's not just in the Southeast. It's always very easy to identify the change movement with the Southeast, which is the home region of the candidate that came to symbolize the yearning and aspiration for change. But when you consider the fact that in places like Benue, in places like Plateau, in places like Yobe, in places like Borno, in places like Rivers, in Edo, in Delta, in vast parts of the Southwest itself, there was a palpable demand for a different direction, and the people came out like that. So you realize very quickly that where the system had not expected to find cohesion, they were shocked to find cohesion. Where the system had not expected that common purposes would be found, common purposes were found across the country. So the people, insofar as it relates to the 25th of February, demonstrated a willingness and a desire to live together as one and to change the system through the peaceful route offered by the electoral system. But that was where it ended. INEC proved to be exactly what it has always been. Completely Nigerian. Nigerian in the sense of everything that has been bad with our country for a long time. It preferred to be ruled by impunity instead of the guidelines and order that it had promised the Nigerian people. So in every way that it was possible for INEC to fail as an institution, it failed woefully. In the same environment, in a system where they are truly citizens, strictly so-called, in a system governed by law, Professor Yakubu, he should be in jail by now because of the multiple infractions of the guidelines that he himself publicly eulogized, sold to everybody from Nigeria to the international community. Straight down the line, we had multiple failures. These are already in the public space. And I speak as Rotimi, a retired lawyer, in case you have forgotten. Now, in that failure, you had INEC servers, or whatever they called it, being switched off. You had beavers unable to transmit results, not because it is incapable of doing so, but because human beings decided to intervene. Because if they allowed the system to work, the room for impunity would disappear. So everything the man promised he promised a Rolls Royce, but he didn't even deliver a jalopy. He delivered an omolanke, unfit for purpose. That is what the man has done at great cost. The money that he has just wasted, squandered, organizing the nonsense that he has now called an election, which is the point of departure with the 25th. I am careful, not because I am particularly respectful of any one of the many lying institutions, but because some people have elected to go to court. I am hoping that that court system will be the perfect place to unrobe the Nigerian state. I remember when we were talking after the Sars, and I was explaining why we were going to the tribunal. I said it, and we were on record as saying that we didn't expect to get justice out of the system, but that since they had opened a tribunal, that we will go to that tribunal and use the tribunal to establish the fact that there was indeed a massacre. And we eventually used that tribunal, and kudos to the chairwoman of the tribunal. We used that tribunal, the same tribunal set up by the state, comprising of members only nominated by the state. We used that same tribunal to prove that the governor was lying. We used that tribunal to prove that the Nigerian police and the Nigerian army are institutional killers and liars. We used the same tribunal to unrobe the state to the point where you began to have inspectors discovering camcorders and things. So we are confident that the OB team at the tribunal would equally use the tribunal to unrobe INEC and different members of the debauched lot who sit in that place and pretend to be serving the country whilst they are ruining it and lining their own pockets. So insofar as it relates to the 25th of February, yes, the people did their part, and INEC failed them as it has always done. The police failed them as they always have, because the police stood by whilst thugs who work in tandem with governors. This is where I speak to the confluence of interest between the criminal elements. Sometimes, even now, you now know that the criminal elements and the traditional institutions in certain parts of the country are in bed with the state. So you have an unholy trinity. And the people are the constant victims. So yes, we had an election. We, the people, did. INEC ensured that our will has not been reflected.
Now, considering the fact that the credibility of that election had been called to question, a lot of Nigerians are quite skeptical about the next governorship and state houses in these elections.
Likely so.
There are widespread voter apathy, so to speak. And considering the fact that Nigerians are quite skeptical, they're afraid that their votes might not count, and that they're going to the poll again on Saturday will be a waste of time and effort.
Let me tell you this. If our votes would not count, we wouldn't have seen INEC as desperate as it was on the 25th. Our votes count. If our votes will not count, they will not be going around burning markets. If our votes will not count, they will not be busy buying all sorts of expired politicians to come back to their side so that they can. It's almost like